Welcome back to College 101. Today we are going to be going through and doing resume reviews of every resume I've used to get my various jobs and internships in the past 5 years. There's 5 of them, so stick around for all of them, and especially watch for the evolution as we go. But first of all, I want to say that to help you guys out and help spread my knowledge as much as I can, the first 25 people who email a resume to the email address above and in the description below, the.college.guide.usa at gmail.com. I'll do a free resume review for you, and if you'd be willing, I'd even put you up online on a video and you can get feedback from people all over the country here on the College Guide. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. These resumes are going to take you all the way from my very first internship when I didn't have any real world work experience, all the way through the resume that I used just 5 months ago to get a job with a large aerospace company. All right, so here is resume number 1. I have the header cut off because it's got all my personal information, but it's pretty basic header, nothing you're missing out on there. So to let you know where I was at, this was my first semester at BYU, so it was my 3rd semester of college. And so there's a few things about it that are a little strange as a transfer student, but hopefully they'll be helpful and applicable to you. So as you can see, that first section right up top, education, like I talked about in my last video, I'm getting a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering. I have both my universities because I was a brand new transfer student, and so I figured they would want to know where I started. And as well, I have my GPA, and that's just my GPA from University of Oklahoma. I hadn't gotten any completed grades at BYU, so I used that old GPA. You'll see that that will change in the future as we move forward. Now let's go to experience, and keep in mind, I had been at BYU for approximately 4 weeks at this point. I used this resume to go to my first career fair at BYU. And as a teaser, this is the resume that got me an internship with one of the largest oil and gas companies in the country, Fortune 50 company. So, it worked out well and it appealed to recruiters. I'm not saying it was perfect. I think I only got 2 interviews and 1 job offer out of that, but you only need 1, right? So let's jump into this experience. So I was an undergraduate research assistant. When I came to BYU, I had identified a professor whose research was really interesting to me. When I first went into chemical engineering, biomedical engineering was the direction I wanted to take it. So this was a professor who was doing research in 3D printing of tissue and organs. So after 4 weeks, I had done the safety trainings. I had helped culture and passage cells, which basically is just kind of like feeding them a little bit, or transferring them from one petri dish or one incubation tray to another. And then I had done a little bit of research and presented in one meeting about like one research article I had read. So not that impressive, but it was enough to say, see, I know about safety, I have done things that are hands-on, and I've done research. So there you go. This next one is a job I had in high school. Did some summers and things like that. It was for a small tech company that was a startup, and they mostly needed a lot of data entry, but my role eventually evolved to where I was doing some testing of their software, some troubleshooting. And so especially for an engineering background, this showed that I was able to think through things logically, learn new products and structures. And then that first one, I was able to throw a number in there that I programmed the Visual Basic macro, and was able to process a lot of data very quickly. It's not worded the best. This entire resume isn't all that eloquent, but it gets the job done. This next one, I will talk about a lot on this channel because I think it's fairly relevant experience, was my 2 years as an LDS missionary. I won't get into the theology of it all, but as you can see here, it was a valuable experience. On that mission, I learned how to train other people for groups from 4 to 20 people. I supervised and set goals and did regular checkups with various other sets of missionaries. And I coordinated and led weekly and monthly meetings with local leadership. And what I mean by that is not just missionaries, but with leaders of local congregations. So I was working with kind of what felt like an outside organization, working with people older than me who had different job functions than me or different service functions. So it showed I had the capability to work in a lot of different capacities with a lot of different people. And now before you guys complain and say, well, I don't have any experience like this isn't fair. Of course you got a job. You've done that thing where you got to train other people and be a leader. Well, just to let you know, and I'm going to make a video about this, but At BYU, a large majority of people have done this. So this really doesn't set me apart. And the video I'm going to make is all about how you can set yourself apart and how setting yourself apart in unique ways is what gets you jobs. This last thing, this goes all the way back to high school that I was on a robotics team. And I put this because as an engineering student, being on a robotics team is pretty engineering heavy, right? So I talk about how I worked on mechanical and electrical systems, safety again. Safety is a big deal in the engineering manufacturing space, so I made sure to talk about that. And then I talked again about outreach and networking. Next, I do have a very, very small skills section. And you see, I didn't put any soft skills here. That's something I was kind of missing that I could have. But I put my programming knowledge and the fact that I had done some labs. And you see, these skills all came from classes I'd taken in high school or college, but I was still able to add them to my resume without saying, well, I took Programming 101 and I took Chemistry 1 and Chemistry 2. I said, these are the skills I've learned. And then this last section, awards and organizations. Here I just called awards. I am a Boy Scouts of America Eagle Scout, so I put that again, kind of an engineering design type problem that I solved, so I figured it was worth putting. And then I was a National Merit Scholar, so I put that as well. So that's my first resume, and like I say, I took this to my first career fair, and I ended up getting 2 interviews, and it got me an internship with Valero. I'll just say their name, it's on my LinkedIn profile, you all could know that anyways. So I went there and I worked for them. So let's move on to resume number 2. And after this, they're going to go a lot faster. I'm mostly going to point out the changes from here on out. So this resume is the one I used while I was in the middle of my first co-op, which I did from January to May, when I was applying for summer internships that year. So not a whole lot has changed, but a little bit. For one thing, you see, I updated my GPA, and that GPA jumped a lot. And what I did is, now that I had a GPA from Brigham Young University, I gave just my BYU GPA. So my first semester at BYU, that was the GPA I got. If you were to average it with my University of Oklahoma GPA, it'd be a little bit lower. But as far as BYU is concerned for scholarships, this was the GPA that mattered. What was going to show on my BYU transcript was this GPA. So I figured I could put this if it made me look better. And there are so many different ways to calculate your GPA. Some people do just their major GPA, some people do overall. For me, I could choose whether I wanted to mix and match my schools or just do the one. So just kind of choose whatever GPA is most flattering, as long as they're not vastly different. If your major GPA is a 4.0 and your overall GPA is like a 2.7, maybe that's a little misleading. But the difference between my overall and my BYU was maybe 0.1. It was like a 3.76 instead of a 3.89. Not a huge difference. Wasn't going to qualify or disqualify me for any jobs, the difference between the two. So I put the GPA that looked best. Then you see here, I have my first real work experience. And so I put that chemical engineering co-op right there at the top. And I have 3 bullet points about it. You see, one of them has a number, a statistic. I did 16 safety audits a month. The other 2 have some buzzwords, process hazard analyses, critical instruments, HF operations. These are things that mean people to the other jobs I was going to apply for. And that's an important thing about a resume, is when you're writing it, you need to have a balance of being too specific and technical that people, especially like HR people, might not know, and being too general, and then the recruiters or the interviewers not actually knowing what you did. So I added that in. I left the software test tech and database clerk, and I actually moved it up higher because it was a little more technical. I have the undergraduate research assistant still, even though I didn't do a whole lot with that after this first semester. I still have my mission, and I still have the robotics team. So I did remove a couple bullet points from a few of these to make more space, because also I got a new skill. While I was at my first internship, I went to a 2-day training about root cause analysis. Again, that's another buzzword that means something to people in the industry. And then my awards are the same, and I added my LinkedIn profile at the bottom. So that's resume number 2. After this, you're going to see a little bit bigger jump. All right, on to resume number 3. So this resume is the one I used after I had had all my internships. So this is during my senior year, going to career fairs, trying to get a full-time job because I decided not to go work for Valero. So here you see, this is where I broke it out into industry experience versus other experience. The other thing you notice is I took my education and put it further down. I did that because I wanted to try it, see how it worked, and because in the end, it was pretty simplistic. I was a chemical engineering major. I had a good GPA, and if I was applying to places mostly online, they're going to get that anyway. So I moved it down, but you'll see I actually didn't stick with that, so I would still keep your education section at the top most likely. So you see here, I've gotten a lot better at writing bullet points for my positions. And part of that could be what my positions did was a little more impressive or a little more technical. But if we go through this first internship here, you see that I have an amount of money that I saved the company. I had a operational increase. I had a number of things completed, all in those first 3 bullet points. And then the next 2 bullet points are a little more fuzzy, soft. I improved this, I coordinated this. So a little more fuzzy there, but it was a lot more specific overall. You also see I had my summer internship from the summer before, and that summer internship, I basically had one project, and so I just put that there, and that was really about it. That second bullet point was very, very minor, but I followed my rule that I need to have at least 2 bullet points to make a job worth talking about, and I could talk about both of these bullet points intelligently and productively, so I put them both. Like I said, I moved my education section down lower, and then you see here, I got rid of the undergraduate research assistant. I felt like the direction I was taking my career towards manufacturing didn't line up with that, so I took it off. I also mostly took off my robotics experience. You see now I took that robotics experience and I put it here under my awards and organizations. And you see here now I have a lot more things in that section, and I've actually split out the skills and organization and awards because space is getting tighter on my resume and having more to talk about. So I stuck those all down there. So I still talk about Boy Scouts of America, I still talk about FIRST Robotics, I still talk about being a National Merit Scholar. However, I have added in my extracurriculars at BYU, the BYU Chi Ultimate Frisbee team, BYU AICHE, which is a professional organization, and the scholarships I had while I was at BYU. My skills section over here has also fleshed out a lot. I have the root cause analysis and investigation facilitation. I also have the full Microsoft Office suite plus Visio, a new software I learned at one of my internships. Python, which is a different programming language than I had listed before. I still have my lab work, and then a new software I learned called PyProcessBook. So I've really started to build out and flesh out these things, build up my toolbox, and you can always add more things to your resume like this, because it could be that having it on there is just a talking point, or it could be that that's the exact software that the company you're going to work for uses, and that's going to be actually really valuable for you. Before we move on to resume number 4, break time. Why did the bell always have a headache? Because it was always ringing, like a ringing headache. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've liked looking at these resumes, or if you think it's great that I'm willing to do 25 free resume reviews if you email me, then please like this video and subscribe to the channel and send your resume on over to the email address in the description below. And if you thought that joke was ridiculous, well, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and come let me know on all of my videos how useless you think those are. All right, back to it, and we are on resume number 4 now. And you see there is a pretty big shift in presentation style, and this is all motivated by having more and more to talk about. One thing you'll notice is my font has gotten smaller. I think I'm using size 10 font now. I wouldn't go any lower than that, but you can shift from 14 or 12 down to 10 as you need the space. I also took my headers on each job from taking up 2 lines to just 1. So you see here now I have job title, company location, and dates. I guess that would be the other direction for you. But, and that's just because, again, I need the space. I've done more things, I've talked about more jobs, and so I need the space. Now, I actually don't have any more experience for this resume than on the last one when it comes to industry experience. These bullet points are all pretty much the same, if not exactly the same. And that's because this resume is when I had my job offer revoked. So fall of my senior year, I had gotten a job offer, and then March of 2020, COVID-19 happened. So many jobs pulled back their job offers, they cut their staff, they didn't know what was going to happen. So I lost my job, so I was job hunting 6 weeks before graduation out of the blue. So I reformatted my resume and started sending it out places, and this is what it looked like. It looks a little more clean, a little more professional, and the main difference here, you see my GPA was updated, my GPA kept creeping up. because I really focused hard on that. And then my other experience, I added in a couple more things. So I still have that software test tech that shows some of my troubleshooting knowledge. I still have my mission as some leadership experience. But I added teaching assistant, which I really loved and enjoyed. And I feel like that's something that means something to recruiters because they say, oh, they're respected and known by the professors in the department. So to be a TA is kind of a good reflection on you. I also put this ultimate frisbee coach just because it was fun. It shows some personality. And again, it was more of a soft skills, a leadership sort of thing. You know, herding around 10 to 24 middle schoolers is a very different sort of leadership than leading other people your own age or working with other adults who may be older and more experienced than you. My skills in organizations and awards stayed basically the same here. So not a whole lot to talk about with this resume. So the last resume to talk about is resume number 5, and I used this one literally 5 months ago to get the job I have now. And so you see, I did bring my education back up to the top, and that was for 2 reasons. One, I knew I was going to be applying online to a lot of places, and I wanted it to be a more predictable format for people, whereas a lot of my other resumes have been used at career fairs. Secondly, there are a few important things that I added to my education section that hopefully made me stand out. The first is that I passed the FE exam, which that's just a licensure exam that engineers can take, so it's kind of an impressive, important thing to put. My team placed second place in our senior design competition. I feel like that was worth putting on there. And then I took an online course for the specific field that I wanted to go into that was hands-on and using a software that is very prevalent. So I put that, even gave it its own entry, even though it's kind of non-traditional education, because this was very specific to the exact job I was applying for. I wouldn't necessarily do this on every resume, but it was something that would make me distinct and stand out from other applicants, especially for a specific role. The other thing I really want to highlight on this position is that the job I got during COVID was actually, you see there, my job title is lead innovation engineer, but it wasn't the traditional kind of engineering that you think of. I worked for an industrial supply company who focused on e-commerce, but they also had a local presence. And my job was to help them expand their product offering, streamline their processes, and basically be their first technical employee to help them really do some development. So that has nothing to do with what I do now, nothing to do with chemical engineering. The only way it was related was that the products that we sold were pretty manufacturing industrial related, but that's really about it. So the important thing I want to share here is how you can frame an experience that maybe isn't the most directly applicable to still be a good thing for your resume. Because I worked at a sales company and I wasn't even a salesperson, so it's like, what did you do? Well, here's how I explained it. The first one is I increased annual sales by 15%. I put that just because they're a sales company. This shows that I was aligned with the vision and goal of the company to sell more things. I also talked about how I did that. I got 100,000 more products. I tripled the products on their website. And that was all done through some programming and automated data collection that I thought was pretty cool. The second bullet point shows, again, some project management and leadership. So I prioritized budgets and objectives for several subcontractors we used. And so this shows that I was able to prioritize things and really work with the team to see what needed to happen first or what needed to happen most. The next thing is an efficiency thing. This is sort of showing an engineering mindset. I unfortunately didn't have any way to quantify it, but if they asked, oh, how did you streamline the processes? I had pretty good answers if it came up in an interview. And lastly, I facilitated growth through OKR goal setting programs for 5 employees. So this shows a leadership or management potential again. Like I say, I worked at a very small company, so even though I came in brand new as a technical hire, I had a lot of leadership opportunities there. So even though this wasn't chemical engineering or even traditional engineering in a lot of ways, I was able to leverage this for my better. However, you see that took up, like 7 lines, and so I did have to take a bullet point off of this process engineering internship. I took a bullet point off of the process safety internship, and all of my other experiences, I condensed down to 1 line. And basically, my thought process here was just show, hey, I worked while I was in college. So Therefore, I know how to juggle things, work on multiple projects at a time, and here's a little bit of my background. Again, being a teaching assistant means something to a lot of people. And then, at least here in Utah, a lot of people know who the LDS missionaries are. So even though this might not have made me stand out from other applicants, people know what it's like and what it means. And then you see my skills here. I added one more skill from my college classes my senior year, and then a couple of skills from my job and a skill from the online course I took. My organizations and awards dropped down though, because now that I was out of college, I wanted to get rid of those scholarships. I kept Eagle Scout, I kept the National Merit Scholar because those are both well known and respected. I also kept the first robotics competition because there were actually several jobs I applied to during college that asked if I'd been involved with it, probably because of some partnership. So I decided, let's go ahead and keep that one, and that way it's something to talk about. But I do put the year so people know I'm not actively involved in it. All right, so those are the 5 resumes I have used to get good jobs in my field, even when from the beginning I didn't have a ton of experience to start with. Hopefully, all of these cover whatever phase of college or life you're in, and you'll find them helpful and be able to implement a few of these tips. Again, I do want to remind you that if you would like a personal resume review, I will do a free resume review for the first 25 of you that send a resume to the email address here and in the description below. So please send that over and I'll send you some feedback. And if you'd be willing, I'd even might make a video and post it here online. Also, on a lot of my resumes, you saw I did have my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to reach out to me there. I'm going to be making a video about LinkedIn where we'll go through my profile. It's, I think, okay, not maybe pristine, but it's pretty good, and I'll go over some of the tips and tricks that I've had. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of College 101 here on the College Guide, and we'll see you next time.